In this video, I'm going to be going over 3 tips for gaining real project experience as an aspiring software engineer without having a job. These tips will work for anyone who's looking to gain experience regardless of the job market. And given the tightening of the labor market that's happening right now for software engineers, I think this advice is timely. And this advice is not something that I just Googled around for. These are actual tips that I used myself personally for landing a job at Sony, which was my first full-time job. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so tip number 1 is to contribute to one open source library. The trick here is to just pick one. Here's why. You want to actually be familiar with the codebase, and that requires a significant time investment. If you jump around between different open source projects, you don't get the compounding effect of building up knowledge about a codebase and then being able to contribute to it meaningfully. This is not something that you'll get done in one afternoon. It's going to take a few days just to get the code up and running and make sure that everything in your environment is set up correctly. But after things are up and running, you'll be able to test the code and tinker a bit, which will help with your understanding of the codebase. A few things that's going to help you land your pull request into these open source libraries. First, make sure that everything builds and passes. Usually open source repos have these automated tasks to make sure that your code can't be submitted if it's broken. But it's good to double check everything for yourself. Make sure that the tests are passing. Next, you want to thoroughly read over the contribution guidelines. These contribution guidelines were created for people like you who want to contribute to the codebase. Get familiarized with it and make sure that you're following all the rules. Another thing you can do is observe other pull requests. One of the quickest ways to see how a pull request should be written is to observe how other merged pull requests are being written. The ones that have been open for a while or get closed due to formatting issues or an issue with the contribution itself are good examples of what not to do. The next thing that you'll want to do is keep an open mind and address feedback quickly. Chances are you won't get things right on the first try. That's okay. That's why we have human code reviews. What's important is that you don't have an ego about your code. It's just code. You're trying to solve a problem, and so take the feedback with open arms. Thank the reviewer for their time and adequately address the feedback and send it back for another review. The next thing to keep in mind is to be professional. It goes without saying, but professionalism is key in order to make sure that your pull requests are merged. You want to be respectful, especially with the core contributors. They are volunteering their time and they could be doing something else like freelance projects to make money. I've come across so many issues on open source repos where people are bickering and fighting over comments on a pull request. That's the ego talking. And it's entirely possible that the core contributor that's reviewing your code might not be nice. But that doesn't mean you have to join the same weird games. You could just stay above it. And finally, treat this like a job. This means learning to be like a professional engineer before you land your first professional engineering gig. This is how you stand out in a sea of unqualified applicants. Okay, so that's how you contribute to open source, which is a phenomenal way to get somebody more senior than you to actually look at your code and give you feedback. You can enlist their help in making you better if you just do the upfront work of providing them value first. Okay, so tip number 2 is to advertise to friends and family, especially those with small businesses, that you're open to solving any problems with technology. Small businesses are great because they always need some form of technology help. If you can sit down with a friend or family who owns a small business that you have rapport with, you can quickly uncover some problems. Business owners always have problems that need to be solved, and they're usually the ones that are the happiest to pay to have them solved. For example, I have a business partner that owns a restaurant, and he's got a complicated spreadsheet system to track operation metrics. Right now, he's looking for a central tool that takes information from disparate systems and consolidates it into one clean dashboard for him. That's a problem you can solve with an app. One of my family members, who's also an entrepreneur, needs some help doing data analysis on a big data set that she bought from a consumer data company. And those are just some examples. These problems are everywhere, left and right, if you just keep your ears and eyes open. So regardless of what the implementation looks like, whether it's a Zapier integration or a Google Apps script implementation, what you want to focus on are the problems that need solving. Now, implementing something like a Zapier integration is not something you can flaunt on a resume because a lot of people can do it that aren't necessarily programmers. But it's a totally viable solution to a real business problem that was solved with technology. And every real business problem that you've solved is fair game to list as professional experience on a resume. At least in my eyes. Okay, but here's the real beauty when you go hunting for problems. When you're able to solve a business problem, there's real potential there to solve the same problem for many businesses through software. I'll give you an example. One of my business partners owns a restaurant. When we met up for lunch one day, he was telling me how he was frustrated with his point of sale system, that it didn't offer an easy way to send order-ready text message notifications to his customers. So I built him a simple integration into his point of sale system. Unfortunately, we couldn't publish that app on the app marketplace for the point of sale system. However, we forked the code and built it as a standalone app. That meant that no POS integration was required. It had less features, but it was simple and straightforward. And this is how I built my first SaaS business, Swift Expo. You can actually check it out at swiftexpo.io. This brings me to my next tip. Tip number 3, create a micro SaaS application. Swift Expo, that app that I just mentioned, is a legit business and it's still in operation today. You don't need anyone's permission to build these things. Go solve a problem and do it with an app that people can pay for. That's it. Now, getting your SaaS application to be actually used and sticky and have users that keep coming back is a really difficult problem to solve. But you don't necessarily need to do that if all you're looking is to break into the industry. Although, if the SaaS app starts to get traction and you start finding sticky users, I say screw the job hunt, and I think you've got a real business there. That is, if entrepreneurship is your thing. Despite these small applications feeling like toy projects sometimes because of their scope, micro SaaS apps are legitimate businesses. In fact, if you think about it, small scale is how all big companies actually start. Every business has to start somewhere with an imperfect product and imperfect feature set. If you're taking payments for customers and the app clearly solves a problem, you've got a real business. And these things are really great resume boosters. They always provide interesting talking points for recruiters and engineers. Moreover, you actually have something to show for it. And on this point, don't forget to build a landing page. A landing page will give your initial visitors an idea of what the app is all about. This is especially important if a recruiter or a hiring manager decides to look at your resume and go through the links. You don't want to take them to something that looks like a toy project and doesn't have any real users. If you look at my Swift Expo app's landing page, you'll see that I invested some time into this. I used a layout structure that is well understood. I have clear copywriting. I have a well-produced animation video. I have useful screenshots, and I have testimonials. These things make a big difference in communicating the legitimacy of the app. In conclusion, all 3 of these tips are great ways that you can gain professional experience as a software engineer. And because you've focused your attention on solving real problems, your resume won't be littered with the same jargon that everyone else is using. Implemented authentication with Firebase, implemented a relational database with MySQL, built front-end components using React and TypeScript. These things can get old pretty quickly because everyone else is doing it. Resort to listing out the specific problems that you solved instead, like enabled restaurants to easily send order-ready notifications with a tap of a button on a tablet device. Nobody cares that you've used Twilio API or Stripe API to process payments. They care about what problems you solved. Focus on the real problems that you can solve with code, and then you'll have a killer resume with lots of talking points. This is how you develop a body of work that's comparable to professional experience. I think this is the kind of experience that's as close to real-world software engineering without needing anyone's permission to do it. It can be done anytime regardless of the job market. You don't need to be employed to do it. The power is in your hands. All right, thanks. That's it for today. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'm gonna be posting on this channel twice a week about software engineering. Also, check out my coding career newsletter, thecommit.dev, where I break down tips and strategies for becoming an effective problem solver and a better engineer. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.